Thank you very much for your courtesy, Mr. Chairman. It's great to see the Secretary and once again on the side of reform, which certainly is needed. In my view, after decades of taxpayer ripoffs and environmental destruction, it is long past time to reform the 1872 mining law. For years, you've had some very large companies getting a sweetheart deal, paying no royalties for the resources removed from federal lands. And that's not right, and they ought to have to pay their fair share. Now, the legislation that we're reviewing today is especially important for other reasons as well. We're going to be looking, for example, at abandoned mine cleanup. There are more than 140 of them in my state alone, and several of them are actually Superfund sites that lack adequate funding for cleanup. So what I'd like to do, Mr. Secretary, is spend a few minutes talking with you about some of the key elements of reform and getting your thoughts. First, I'd like to ask your thoughts about royalty reform as it relates to the mining area. The Bush administration's Department of Interior, for example, testified that they would like to see a royalty system similar to the infamous program that was exposed by the Interior Inspector General at Minerals Management. I think that would be a very significant policy error. It's going to be important to get royalty payment reform right. And could you just spend a minute or two ticking off first your thoughts about what the key elements of responsible royalty reform would consist of?
Thank you very much, Senator Wyden, and thank you for your leadership on this issue and so many other issues. From my point of view, royalty reform, first of all, has to be a royalty level, royalty amount that will not drive mining out of business, at the same time making sure that we're protecting the American taxpayer. I know Senator Bingham's bill has a range of, I believe, up to 5%. I don't know, and we don't have a position yet on what exactly the royalty amount should be, but it should be a fair return to the American taxpayer. It also should be the kind of royalty that is transparent and that is easily accountable for relative to the royalties that need to be collected. You know, part of what we are looking at with respect to an agency that you know so well, MMS, is how we do royalty reform to make sure that we have accountability with respect to the royalties that have to be paid. And I think that the lessons that we're learning as we do the review of MMS might be very applicable to what kind of royalty mechanism is set up with respect to hard rock mineral mining.
So you believe that as part of royalty reform, there should be more openness and more transparency so that the public can actually see how these decisions are made, because that was part of the badly flawed approach that was used at Minerals Management. The lack of openness was part of the reason we saw that program tarred by scandal.
I agree with you, Senator Wyden. I think one of the things that we have to aim for is simplicity as well. I mean, one of the problems we've already seen with respect to MMS and the oil and gas royalty collection mechanism is that it is very difficult to understand and very cumbersome to actually make the collections that are accurate collections. And so we are looking at proposals that we hope to bring before the Congress that will deal with royalty simplification in the oil and gas context. And I think those same lessons would apply here.
One other quick question. I see the clock has run on me. What are your thoughts about dealing with abandoned mines? One of the big issues with hard rock mining is when these huge operations, in effect, don't clean up after themselves, and then there is huge taxpayer expense and big environmental hazards. Now, BLM has had a problem with making sure, for example, that some of these large companies that have the financial wherewithal to pay for cleanup do it, and the problem is that they're just shirking their responsibilities. So what would be your thoughts on trying to make sure that in the future we don't have those same problems where people, in effect, mine, profit, and run?
Senator Wyden, I believe that the legislation which Senator Bingaman has introduced addresses that issue in part with the kinds of financial sureties that have to be provided for mining operations. It is accurate for you to conclude that there have been examples across the public domain where companies simply have not had the financial wherewithal to essentially complete the cleanup of mines once mining terminates. That's a very appropriate issue for this committee to consider as we deal with mining reform. And as I said earlier in my testimony, the other part of it is how are we going to deal with the legacy of abandoned mines across the West, including many of the mines that you indicated exist in the state of Oregon.
I appreciate your views. I think you are going to put the department, finally, after years of ducking this issue, you're going to put the department on the reform side of the agenda. And I think in each one of these examples, the kind of balance you're trying to strike is the way to go. For example, in that last point I made, when you have companies that do have the financial wherewithal, these huge companies, then we cannot let them walk away. If we're talking about the smaller concerns, again, you're going to have to try to strike a balance that's going to work both for the environment and local communities as well as these small companies. I think you're prepared to strike that kind of balance, and I look forward to working with you.